Right now, on to the point. Spending on homeless programs under the microscope.
Are those dollars reaching the people that need it the most?
What state lawmakers are now looking into. A dead heat in the race for governor.
It's kind of like anything could happen.
Voters sound off on government and life after Gavin Newsom. In our series of interviews with candidates for governor, tonight Katie Porter says what she'll bring to the job.
I know what it's like to see your expenses go up.
And in our Champions of Hope, a young lady with racing in her blood, chasing her dreams around the track.
How well is California spending your money on homelessness? Thank you for joining us. I'm Alex Bell. That was the very topic of an oversight hearing today at the Capitol. AB's 10's Becca Habegger followed the meeting and joins us now live in studio.
Yeah, Alex, the oversight hearing comes nearly 2 years after that infamous audit found the state was doing a poor job tracking and spending outcomes for many of its homelessness programs. So I spoke with two state lawmakers on both sides of the aisle for their updates on the issue.
Homelessness, the never-ending story.
I want to make sure that every dollar is accounted for.
That's Democratic State Senator Melissa Hurtado and Republican Senator Roger Nilo, both members of this Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Subcommittee.
We need to be able to use the data system to make real choices.
On Thursday, members heard from two of the biggest entities using your tax dollars to address the homelessness crisis, the Department of Housing and Community Development and the Interagency Council on Homelessness, or CAL-ICH.
California has now the strongest data infrastructure we've ever had to answer these really important questions.
That's a change from 2 years ago when a report from the state auditor found CAL-ICH, which is responsible for coordinating agencies and allocating resources for homelessness programs, stopped tracking spending on programs and outcomes in 2021, despite the continuous funding from the state.
What we need to talk about is outcomes. That's what that audit showed. There was really very little accountability for that. I do think the state agencies are reoriented toward that, but time will tell.
Both Nilo and Hurtado say they're glad to see these entities strengthening systems for tracking and reporting spending and outcomes.
You won't have an accurate picture of what's going on or where funding, where money is gone missing if you don't understand the inputs and the outputs and all of it all together.
Nilo says he wants to see the state give more control of flexible homelessness funding to local entities, especially counties.
Counties have always been the state's health and human services providers.
And he says he wants to see programs guide as many people as possible towards self-sufficiency.
And I rarely hear people say that at the state level. That has to be the ultimate goal.
Hurtado says the state is moving in the right direction, but more needs to be done.
There has been progress made. There has been additional information that now they're incorporating to make sure that they have, and the different mechanisms that are being put into place. The question is, how long is it going to take? From what I heard today, some of it's going to take a little bit longer than expected.
So are accountability measures working? Lawmakers are still asking questions.
I know that the need is definitely there, and I want those dollars to go to the individuals that need it the most. The question is, are those dollars reaching the people that need it the most?
Lawmakers also discussed homelessness or homeless housing assistance and prevention, or HAP money. Newsom has funded that program at $1 billion annually for the past 4 years and plans to fund it at just $500 million this coming fiscal year. But the budget still has months before it's set, so we'll continue following this. Alex?
All right, Becca, thank you. New tonight, the Placer County District Attorney's Office just filed charges against David Allen Funston for lewd and lascivious acts upon a child. Now, we have been following this story of outrage over David Funston since a Sacramento County news conference on Monday. Funston is a 64-year-old Sacramento area man convicted of kidnapping and raping multiple children in the 90s who was eligible for parole. But tonight, the Placer County District Attorney says he is now in the Placer County Jail without bail. Their charges stem from sexual assault of a young child in Roseville back in 1996. The district attorney says because Funston was sentenced to 3 life terms, for his previous crimes. The office did not pursue separate prosecution at the time. Now, these new charges comes as the state Senate Republicans are now calling on Governor Gavin Newsom to remove members of the Board of Parole hearings after granting him parole. A 2017 law established the elderly parole program, and in 2020, the law expanded eligibility so many inmates can be considered for parole if they are at least 50 years old and served at least 20 years of their sentence. The Board of Parole granted Funston elderly parole back in September. In January, Governor Newsom asked them to review that decision, and last week, the board affirmed Funston's parole. Now, current law only allows the governor to overturn a parole hearing in a murder case, so Senate Republicans are now calling on Newsom to remove board members instead.
From my perspective, the parole board does not have public safety and our kids' best interest at heart. They paroled this predator, which is disgusting, and I'm calling on the governor, and Republican colleagues of mine have also joined me in calling on the governor to, one, fire this parole board.
We reached out to the Board of Parole Hearings, which directed our questions to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation's Public Communications Office. We reached out and have not heard back. We also checked in with the governor's office, which declined to comment on the Republicans' request. More than 2,000 immigrant truck drivers will be able to keep their licenses in California, at least for now. A judge issued a tentative ruling blocking efforts by the Trump administration and the state to revoke those licenses. The U.S. Department of Transportation had pushed the California DMV to rescind them, citing alleged clerical errors involving expiration dates. The DMV complied last fall, sending letters to more than 20,000 drivers, many of them asylum seekers and immigrants with temporary legal status, warning their licenses would expire within 60 days. A final ruling is expected later this week, when the state must explain how it plans to protect the driver's licenses while complying with federal demands. A new poll is shining light on how Californians feel about government, given recent events like the immigration operation in Minnesota and Governor Gavin Newsom's proposed budget for the next year. And a top takeaway, well, there's a five-way tie in the race to succeed Newsom. ABC 10 State Matters political reporter Jenny Ha has the details for us tonight.
It's kind of like anything could happen.
Anybody's ball game on the Republican side, anybody's ball game on the Democratic side.
Some of us would rather see a purge than a surge because we want to get rid of some of these candidates. But
the consensus by political experts on a new survey by the Nonpartisan Public Policy Institute of California is there's no front runner on either side of the aisle in the race to succeed Governor Gavin Newsom. Even those leading in the poll are technically tied due to the margin of error.
So if one is 10 and one is 14, mathematically, it's essentially saying they're tied.
Likely voters are closely divided between five candidates: 14% for Republican former Fox News host Steve Hilton, 13% for Democrat former Congresswoman Katie Porter, 12% for Republican Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, 11% for Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, 10% for Democrat billionaire Tom Steyer.
Steyer coming up is a function of a massive amount of spending.
Steyer has been the top spender so far in campaign ads, which we will see more of from more candidates soon, experts say.
The average voters who aren't even paying attention to this race yet.
Nearly 50% of likely voters surveyed say they're not following the race, and 61% of likely voters say they're satisfied with the candidate choices. An interesting base, the independent voters. The poll shows 15% are for Porter, 11% for Hilton and Steyer, 9% for Bianco, and 8% for Swalwell. But
those are exactly the kind of voters that don't vote in primary elections.
Election data expert Paul Mitchell notes in primaries, it's often the most partisan and engaged voters that go to the polls.
Those people who are either turning out because they're extremely angry with what's happening with Trump or extremely excited about what's happening with Trump.
Of those surveyed, over 30% say cost of living and the economy is the top state issue, and 37% say threats to democracy is the top national issue.
And show those California voters what you will do to make their life better.
And the elephant in the room, Newsom, who maintains an approval rating in the 50s and is on a nationwide book tour for his memoir, Young Man in a Hurry.
He can walk and chew gum, but whatever he does at this point is going to be viewed through a lens of he's running for president.
Jenny Ha, ABC 10.
And I do want to mention that Republican strategist Tim Rosales represents GOP candidate John Slavitt in the race. All right, so a lot more news to get to. We continue with our interviews of the Democratic candidates for governor. Tonight, we hear from Katie Porter on why she wants the job. And then in our Champions of Hope, we meet a local teen racing her way into history and also inspiring other girls to follow their dreams.
Today was the warmest day of the year so far. Tomorrow is forecast to be even warmer. I've got a full look at that forecast after the break.
But first, another headlines tonight. Warner Brothers Discovery says Paramount's latest takeover bid is a better deal than its agreement with Netflix. Warner Brothers backed Netflix's proposal for months, but Paramount upped its bid for the entire company to $31 per share, plus other revisions. Netflix was given 4 days to try to match the deal. They already declined to raise the offer today, saying the deal is no longer financially attractive. There was a flurry of activity yesterday at Nancy Guthrie's home. A flood of new tips poured in after Today Show host Savannah Guthrie posted a video Tuesday announcing an increased reward of up to $1 million for information leading to her mother's recovery. The increased reward led to hundreds of new leads. The 84-year-old has been missing for 4 weeks. And events honoring late civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson began today. His body is scheduled to lie in state today and tomorrow in the Rainbow Push Coalition headquarters, the organization he founded in Chicago. He is set to get the same honor on Monday inside the South Carolina state capitol. Jackson died peacefully last week following a battle with a rare brain disease.
Well, it was absolutely beautiful outside today. Lots of sunshine, things warming up. Let's get things over to meteorologist Brendan Minchef.
Yeah, warmest day of the year so far across much of Northern California. 72 today in Sacramento, 73 in Stockton and Modesto, 73 Vacaville and Fairfield as well, 70 in Auburn, 72 Marysville, mid to upper 50s in the high country. Warmest day of the year in Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto, Vacaville, and Marysville, as well as many other places in the valley as we climbed into the low 70s. Tomorrow likely to be even a touch warmer, though. 65 in Sacramento right now, 64 in Stockton, 66 Modesto, 50s and 60s in the foothills, 40s up in the high country. Looking towards downtown, 65 degrees. Very similar temperatures to 24 hours ago, but we have a little bit of a northerly wind, and that wind will stick with us as we go through the evening and overnight. That should prevent widespread fog from forming. I know we had some widespread fog this morning, had that dense fog for Friday morning because we'll have just that little bit of a breeze. Should not be nearly as widespread. 53 in Sacramento to start Friday morning, 53 Stockton, 53 in Modesto, 55 in Placerville, 31 in Truckee, and 34 in South Lake Tahoe. Again, just that little bit of a breeze, especially in the Sacramento Valley. Going to keep much fog from forming. We'll get a little bit. It will be a little patchy, especially towards the foothills, but not like what we had this morning. Tomorrow afternoon, I expect us to go into those middle 70s. 75 in Sacramento, 76 in Vacaville, 77 Fairfield, 74 in Stockton, and 75 in Modesto. These temperatures are about 10 degrees warmer than normal for late February as we move through the final days of this month and into the beginning of March. A quick passing system this weekend could bring a chance for some light showers to the high country. We're going to stay dry in the valley over the next 10 days. Dry, but also warmer than normal with plenty of days in the 70s. Alex?
All right, Brendan, thank you. All right, stick with me. Right after the break, I continue my interviews with the Democratic candidates for governor. Tonight, you'll be hearing from Katie Porter on what her priorities would be her first year in office if elected. And then, of course, we have a tribute. They are pouring in as we remember a longtime News 10 anchor. This June, Californians will head to the polls to help decide who could become the state's next governor, while the final decision comes in November. For now, 9 leading Democratic hopefuls and several Republicans are in the race. To help you get to know them a little bit better and what they say they would bring to the job, I sat down with the candidates at this past weekend's Democratic convention, and I will also do the same with the Republican Party. And to keep things fair, I drew names at random for these interviews. Meet Katie Porter. For people that are meeting you for the first time, why are you deciding to run for governor of California?
I'm running for governor of California to bring down costs for regular Californians. Affordability has become a big buzzword, but people don't need politicians telling them that life is unaffordable. They know. I'm a single mom of 3 teenagers. I push the grocery cart. I pay the bills. I fill up my minivan with gas. So I know what it's like to see your expenses go up and dollars not just stretch far enough. Affordability has been my life's work, studying families pushed into bankruptcy by medical debt or job loss, running a statewide foreclosure prevention program for then Attorney General Kamala Harris. So we need big solutions on affordability. People aren't leaving California because they're $5 or $10 short. They're leaving California because they are hundreds and hundreds of dollars away from being able to take care of their family the way they want.
And if you were to be elected, what would be your top 3 priorities your first year in office?
We have to look at what are families' biggest expenses. So they are housing, first and foremost. It takes up most of people's budget. So building more housing, building housing much more quickly. We build 2 years slower in California than in Colorado. We can do better. We're the most innovative state in the world, in the country, so we can innovate in how we build housing. Different construction techniques, different materials. My second priority is free childcare for every Californian. You can talk to any kind of economist from the far left to the far right, and they will all say that bringing down the cost of childcare is the biggest thing we could do to make our economy grow and accelerate. And then the third thing is we talk about affordability, and I've taken on big corporations and greedy corporations with my whiteboard in Congress, but one of the things we can do for affordability is change government's role in it. So to that end, I will eliminate state income tax for Californians making less than $100,000. That is a real affordability solution. We can deliver it right away.
And I do want to talk about homelessness. California has spent billions trying to address this big issue. What would you do differently to address homelessness?
It's really hard to solve a problem when the problem's getting bigger. So we have to focus on preventing people from becoming homeless. That is really important. Well, we're not right now. We're putting all of our money in helping those who have experienced long-term homelessness. Those people are important. They're Californians, and we need to get them into permanent supportive housing. But homelessness and the path to get there are other intervention points that are much less expensive and much more humane. So things like rapid rehousing, eviction prevention strategies, these work. They're cheaper, and they stop people from ever having to live on our streets.
Do you think that California has gone too far, not far enough, or has struck the right balance when it comes to criminal justice reform?
We're definitely moving in the right direction on criminal justice reform, particularly in terms of looking back at what are the consequences of our 3-strike law. In terms of retail theft, which has been a big issue, in terms of street crime, prevention is always going to be the first strategy, because it's not just about catching the person and punishing them and they commit a crime. We all think that should happen. It is about making sure that people feel confident that they can walk down the street safely. They can go to a playground with their kids and be safe. We've passed Prop 36. That's focused on punishment. We need punishment, but we really need to dig in on prevention and making our streets feel safe.
And we are going to keep these candidate profiles going at 6:30, giving you a closer look at the top Democrats in the race. Tomorrow, I sit down with Antonio Villaraigosa, and we are also working to sit down with the Republican candidates as we continue our coverage for the race for California's next governor. And tonight, friends and former colleagues are remembering longtime News 10 anchor Dick Cable, who passed away. Cable worked for nearly 3 decades at the station before retiring, but he still kept busy. He was honored by the Child Abuse Prevention Council, which named the Dick Cable Boardroom in his honor. In 1991, he was honored as a Silver Circle recipient by the Northern California Emmy chapter, recognizing his lasting contribution to the news industry. Our newsroom is also proudly named the Dick Cable Newsroom in his honor. But most will remember Dick Cable as the trusted journalist on the evening news. Those who knew him also remember his kindness, his professionalism, and also his sense of humor. From neighbors helping neighbors to inspiring acts of kindness, each week we bring you a champion of hope. Now, most 15-year-olds are just learning how to drive, but tonight we introduce you to one Lincoln teen who is already chasing a NASCAR dream. Yes, you heard that right. Kylie Glick spends her Saturday nights doing homework of different kinds. She's studying laps, perfecting turns, and pushing her limits at the All-American Speedway out in Roseville. Racing runs in her blood. She is a 4th-generation driver, but Kylie is carving out her own lane in a sport that is still largely dominated by men. Now, her journey from local short tracks to big-time aspirations is also featured in a series that highlights grassroots racers with big dreams. And for Kylie, every lap is one step closer to NASCAR.
When you put your helmet on, like everything else is silence. It's only you in the car, you and your thoughts. Everything slows down.
Kylie says that she hopes her story inspires other young girls to chase whatever dream gets their heart racing. And judging by her momentum, this is one driver I'm expecting that we'll hear a lot more about in the future too. As always, thank you so much for watching and for always inviting us into your home. If you have something that you think me and the team should be looking into, you can always reach out to us at tothepoint@abc10.com. And To The Point does not end here. If you do want to see more of those candidate profiles or even catch up on any stories that you missed, you can always download our free ABC 10 streaming app. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.